Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I must confess that I'm really very excited and very fascinated by this product. I think it will be extremely useful for me, for myself, for Tunisian, and I think for many people who are trying to think about how to improve democracy, how to implement democracy, and so on. About Tunisia, I was asked to talk to you about Tunisia. I would like to remind you that we are writing down our 7th constitution. The first one was at 800 BC. 800 BC. Then we have had one at 8061, and then at 9059, and then another 1211, and then our 7th constitution. So the problem is, why are we writing down so many constitutions? Probably because no one worked. Probably because we are still working on the problem. Probably because we didn't find a good solution to our political system. Probably because we don't know how to implement good texts and so forth. So will we succeed that time? Will we be able to write down a new constitution that this constitution would solve the problems, would last? I'm not sure. I'm afraid that we will have to sit revolution after revolution, once again and once again, because this process has no end. I think this is the main, the most important idea, that we have to think about new texts and how to implement them, and it will take many difficulties to achieve this goal, and I'm afraid that we will never achieve this goal. We have all the time to face a lot of challenges and difficulties. So when we sit down now after this revolution to think about the new Tunisia, to see what are the challenges and to try to find solutions for these challenges, we decided that much more important than to have a text, ready text, to look to the other text like here and say, we are going to, I wouldn't say copy or take from this constitution of the other. We're not going to ask technicians, to write down the best text in the world. It's much more important to discuss the matter. This is why we have had more than 2 years of discussion between scholars, politicians, citizens. It was extremely difficult task because when you put people from different social background, from ideological background, it's extremely difficult to reach any consensus. But we have chosen this way, the most difficult way, because we think that making people participate to this process is much more important than to have a good text written by good specialists and so forth. And it is the occasion also to see what are our conflicts, why we do not agree, and what are the main subjects that we probably could be the reason of new conflicts, new violence. Could we, by discussion, try to avoid this conflict, try to avoid this violence? So the kind of question that we have discussed during more than 2 years, sometimes very roughly. For instance, what do we expect from this text? Who we are, where are you from? Why did we decide to write a new constitution? What we are trying to avoid? What is the suffering of our people? How can we protect our people? And finally, where do we go from here? These questions do not require constitutional law experts, as I told you. They require consensus and an open mind on everyone's experience and hope for the future. Many Tunisians have spent decades in prison under the dictatorship, with the sacred Quran as only book to read. Many were forced to exile, such as myself. Many were denied basic human rights. Many were tortured, and many were executed because of unfair economic system and corruption. Everyone wants to impose his or her way to protect future generation of Tunisians based on the way they have experienced these years of dictatorship. No wonder why this process takes time, and no wonder why identity debates are omnipresent. So the Tunisian revolution has this uniqueness of being what I call an organic revolution. It came from within, by Tunisian, for Tunisian, in the same spirit of the Constituent Assembly members decide to start from a blank page. They have nonetheless taken inspiration from other constitutions, such as Poland and Ireland regarding the place of religion, Portugal for the political system, or Ecuador and Bolivia for questions relatively to sovereignty and environment. This is why this product is extremely important. All the constitutions of the world represent the patrimony of humanity and therefore an incredible source of inspiration for constituent writers. So despite all the discussion, despite all the conflicts, despite all the problems, we are reaching a consensus. But I must confess that reaching this consensus is extremely difficult. We still have debates about the political regime, about how to protect human rights, about how to protect women's rights, and we have different views. But instead of imposing my point of view, I'm still convinced that discussing, I wouldn't say for years, because we have to stop the process. At one time we have to say, okay, we have to finish the text, otherwise we are going to discuss it for decades. So I expect the process to be achieved in 2 or 3 months. But after that time, we will have, once again, a new constitution, and the problem would be to implement it. Here, in the United States, Americans maintain the memory of the founding fathers through reenactment, plays, and education. Through their living narrative, Americans feel that they are part of the constitution building process. This is what we need to achieve in Tunisia. Much more important than having the text is, I wouldn't say to sell it to the population, but the population has to adopt it. Otherwise, it will be just a piece of paper, a piece of sheet. We have to convince the population that this is the text, fundamental text that would protect future generation from dictatorship. But because you cannot understand our position, what we are trying to avoid is a new dictatorship. We have suffered so long time from this harsh and dictatorship that our main obsession, when writing the Constitution, especially when discussing the political regime, is how to avoid a new dictatorship. But, avoiding dictatorship is easier on the paper, but when you have population with such background, such a long history of dictatorships, such the dream of a strong man, the dream of a strong man protecting the population against chaos. When you see that democracy sometimes brings chaos, something like close to chaos, I wouldn't say chaos, but something, disorder. Now Tunisians are suffering from the disorder after the revolution. And they are dreaming, many of them are dreaming, of a strong man who would come back with the discipline, with, with social discipline and so forth. So we need a lot of time, to explain to our population that they would be protected by laws, by human rights, by accepting the other, and not by this famous strongman who, turned out to be always a new dictator. So this is the challenge we are meeting, writing the 7th Constitution, hoping that it will be the last, hoping that it will be implemented, hoping that it will be accepted by the population, hoping that it will be part of our culture, because this is the most important thing, that this text would become a part of our culture. Now let me tell you just a few words about the new ideas we have. We are trying to sell, if I may say, to the General Assembly of the United Nations, is the problem of international. You have probably heard about our proposition, the Tunisian proposition of international constitutional court. This international constitutional court would assess about whether this election in this country is fair election, whether the constitution of the world are acceptable from the human rights point of view. And every time when I talk about this international constitutional court, they say, hey, we don't have an international constitution. And I say, yes, we have. The international constitution is the International Covenant, Human Rights Declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and so forth. So you see that we have to face 2 challenges. First of all, every country has to have its own constitution, but the humanity, the mankind, all of us should have also this international constitution. Fortunately, we have it, and we are writing down this international constitution since 50 years. And I hope that with this international constitution and this good national constitution, we would probably try to maintain the level of violence, to maintain the level of injustice. I wouldn't say at an acceptable point, but this is what we can hope for the moment, because I'm not sure that we are going to have this ideal world or this ideal country very soon. But we have to keep trying and trying and trying. This is my philosophy in the world. Thank you so much.